Torah Garden, speaking the absolute truth. Torah Nation. Shalom, 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 Yasharah, Yahuda. Also, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat beginning tonight at sundown and going to tomorrow sundown. Right? We praise Yahuwah for the witness of Yahushua HaMashiach. We praise Yahuwah for the witness of Yahushua HaMashiach. We praise Yahuwah for Yahusha being the high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. We recognize that only a remnant is going to walk into his kingdom having received the witness. Only a remnant is going to enter in to this kingdom that Yahuwah has established. Only a remnant are going to return to faith in Hamashiach. Only a remnant. Listening to none other than Hezekiah. Song is entitled The Remnant, off of his CD Do It For The Nation. This Ak is doing it for the nation. I am delivering this Basor and this Torah to you on behalf of Yahuwah and Yahusha, and it's to the nation. The word is going forth to the Gentiles that Yahuwah has chosen, and to the nation, Yasharal and Yehuda, that have woken up and understand who they are, who have turned to faith in Hamashiach, receiving his witness. This is for you. Yahuwah, I pray right now in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach that the words you give me by the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, to them they would receive it. Yahuwah, I pray that you would take the reins of my lips and the reins of my tongue and reign. Yahuwah, the words you have given to Yahusha, that he has given to Yehukanan, that he has given to me, and I have received it in Emunah as it is recorded in the Besoros. I've received this witness. This witness was necessary. This renewed covenant recorded was necessary. Yahuwah, I pray right now in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach for your people, that they would receive this witness. I thank you for the witness, the water, the blood, and the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. Yahushua himself said that we must be born again of the water and of the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. You established him as a high priest forever. After the order of Melchizedek, Yahuwah, I give you praise. Yahuwah, I pray right now in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart will be acceptable in thy sight. I pray that I would cause no one to stumble, no one to come up lame, no one to be turned out of the way. Yahuwah, this is for the remnant. This is for those who will receive this witness. Yahuwah, I pray in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. I pray that they would receive your witness. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Listen, Hebrew. Only a remnant. Only a remnant is going to return back to Jerusalem. Only a remnant is going to return to Shalom. Only a remnant is going to return and be gathered to Shiloh. Only a remnant. Again, none other than Hezekiah. Do it for the nation. Only a remnant. I don't own the rights to this music. Listen. Only a remnant is going to enter into rest. Yahuwah's rest. Yahusha's rest. Only a remnant are going to be established in the kingdom. Right? To participate in the kingdom. Right? The kingdom that Yahuwah had put on hold because of the sin of Adam and Havah. having taken his Ruach Ha'Qodesh that he had once put in Adam and Havah, and who had dominion in the Eretz, and who was called to subdue it. When they yielded up surrendered their authority to Hasatan by virtue of their disobedience, right? They gave it to him because they disobeyed Yahuwah. They violated his Torah, having received his Ruach Ha'Qodesh. Having received his Ruach Ha'Qodesh, having lived in accordance with his Ruach Ha'Qodesh, having received a Torah, a commandment to keep, they violated it. And because they did, it was surrendered over to Hasatan, because now the kingdom was on hold. The kingdom of Yahuwah was on hold until Yahusha. Yes, there was a kingdom under Dawid. That was a test run. Yes, there was law, statutes, and commandments given to men. There was a priesthood. There was a Levitical priesthood. Yeah, and that was a shadow. That was not the kingdom. That was not the tabernacle. That was not the fullness of what Yahuwah had in Yahusha, right? But Yahuwah had a plan. He told Adam and Havah the plan. Adam and Havah, all they had to do was be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, to put the kibosh down on the Eretz. That's all they had to do, and obey Yahuwah's Torah. But Eve did not. She surrendered with her virtual act of disobedience, her authority. And then she gave to Adam, and Adam surrendered. Right? And had not Adam surrendered, Yahuwah would have dealt with Eve. Oh yeah, he would have dealt with Eve. But Adam had surrendered. They both were commanded to be fruitful and multiply and put the kibosh down on the earth. So they both surrendered the kingdom. And Yahuwah, you know, he put a flaming sword in front of the entrance of this garden, which was a part of his kingdom, right? Because ain't nobody getting in to eternal life. No one is going to be able to walk in. See, they couldn't go in because they didn't have his Ruach. They didn't have his Ruach HaQodesh. They weren't established any longer. Sin separated them from the Ruach of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah had to, through Yahusha, offer up a sacrifice and put clothes on them to cover their nakedness. Yahusha, high priest, had to sacrifice because he's the order of Melchizedek. Forever. He was a high priest of Yahuwah. Listen, the kingdom waited. Yahuwah told Hasatan, look at, the woman's seed is going to bruise thy head. Yeah. That which she carries in her womb is going to bruise thy head. And you are going to bruise his heel. Right? And in the process of you developing and establishing this kingdom that you're going to become, you become the prince of the power of the air. You are going to be the motivation behind the children of disobedience, right? Until Yahusha comes. Until Yahusha reestablishes his kingdom. See, because the kingdom was about us establishing a people who would be set apart in his Ruach HaQodesh. Listen. This is the sevenfold doctrine of creation. Listen, Yahuwah's plan has always been to establish a kingdom in the Eretz. Everything that Yahusha has done in the Ruach, everything that Yahuwah has revealed in the Ruach HaQodesh is all a part of the plan. The plan is that Yahusha would eventually come and establish his kingdom. He will take dominion back from Hasatan, right? He triumphed over death. He triumphed over the power to hold men in Sheol. And by the power of Yahuwah, he was raised, right? And then this high priest that was raised went into the Shamayim. into the most holy, and then into the holies of holies, and offered up his blood as an atonement for sin. He made it possible once and for all to establish us back in the kingdom. That which Adam and Havah had lost in YAHUSHA HaMashiach's witness, and what he has given us in the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, which is the Father and him in us. We have been reestablished in this kingdom. And this kingdom, right, creation groans and travails, waiting for the manifestations of the sons of Elohiym. Listen, creation knows that we have been reestablished in the witness of YAHUSHA HaMashiach. Creation recognizes that there is going to be this ultimate setting straight of things, and YAHUSHA HaMashiach returns. Listen, man of Yah, woman of Yah, you got to get this. You got to understand this. This is Ruach. And listen, you have to receive the witness of YAHUSHA HaMashiach. If you can't grab hold of this, if this is getting past you in a way, then that means that you need to receive it in emunah and receive it in faith, trusting in what YAHUSHA has said. Hebrew. Yahuwah has spoken to you at sundry times and in diverse manners. He spake unto you. He spoke unto your fathers by the prophets. He has revealed himself in the prophets. He has showed by signs and wonders in the prophets, right? He has pointed throughout the text, throughout the volume of the book, to YAHUSHA. He is pointing to the sanctification that comes through YAHUSHA, because YAHUSHA is that righteous plant where righteousness is taken from, right? You have to get this, right? He says he has spoken to your fathers, Hebrews 1:1. For Elohiym at sundry times and in diverse manners has spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets, and having in these last days spoken to us by his Son, YAHUSHA HaMashiach. Hebrew, you got to receive this witness. You have to receive this witness, because he has appointed him heir over all things, by whom he has made the worlds. Listen, you have to understand that even from the beginning, you who say it's just Yah only. It's Yah only. It's the Torah and Tanakh. It's Yah. Listen, right? I've never read I haven't even read in depth the Torah and Tanakh. I mean, I've read the Torah, and as it's written in the 1911 edition of the book, right? But I've never physically read the Torah and Tanakh. But listen, if you receive the witness of YAHUSHA HaMashiach, YAHUSHA is going to reveal all truth to you, whether or not you have a Torah Tanakh. He's going to reveal the truth to you whether you know Hebrew completely or not, whether you know Greek or not. Listen, he's going to reveal it to you in the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. That's why you must receive the witness, right? Listen, he's made YAHUSHA heirs over all things, and by YAHUSHA he has made the worlds, right? Listen, he said in Genesis, he moved and said, what? The Torah, right? He spoke a Torah. YAHUSHA was that Torah and carried it out. In the power and the strength of the Ruach Ha'Qodesh brought it to pass. He said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. After whose image? After whose likeness? Him, YAHUSHA, in the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. Listen, you have to understand YAHUSHA is in the volume of the book. He's in the volume of the book. YAHUSHA is in the beginning. YAHUSHA is in the beginning. You ain't going to be able to wrap your head around this unless you have received the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. And I ain't talking about what you've seen in the Christian church, because that ain't the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. That ain't the witness of Yahushua HaMashiach. And yeah, I said it and I'm going to keep saying it. It is not the witness. There is no way that Yahusha is in support of a Sunday Shabbat, a Sunday Sabbath, when he has already established the Sabbath as a day of rest, which is the seventh day, not the first day. Listen, it's not that. It's not that. You can't continue to sin. You can't say that the law is done away with. You can't make these claims and have the Ruach Ha'Qodesh and be a people say that you're called by the name of Yahuwah. You're not. So the witness is in you, in us who have received Yahushua HaMashiach's witness. Now, the Gentiles who have received the witness of Yahushua HaMashiach, who was established in the Torah, who keep his commandments, listen, yeah. You have the Ruach HaQodesh. This stuff should be making sense to you if you have the Ruach HaQodesh. And if it doesn't, and you have the Ruach HaQodesh, you need to pray to Yahuwah and ask him to reveal this in the Ruach HaQodesh. Listen, because the Word was made flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Yahuwah, and the Word was Yahuwah. The same was in the beginning with Yahuwah. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Yahusha had his hands in creation. Without him was not anything made that is made. Yahuwah spoke a word. Yahusha was the Torah of that word. He was made flesh. That word became flesh, the Torah. Listen. You have to understand this, Hebrew. Listen, Yahusha is the heir over all things. He is the heir over all things, right? And listen, because we begin to understand that this is Yahusha, this is the son of Elohiym, this is who Yahuwah has designated above the angels. He has given Yahusha a position and a place that is above the angels. Listen, there is Yahuwah, the Word, and the Ruach HaQodesh in the Shamayim. Yahusha is that Word made flesh. That Word, right, has been elevated, right, over principalities and powers when he received the Ruach HaQodesh, but he was made lower than them because he had now he left from being a spiritual word entity to becoming a physical, fleshly, possibly decaying entity, which would make him lesser than the angels. But, Yahusha is still crowned with glory and honor and righteousness because he is the son of Elohiym. He is the Torah made flesh. We got to give the more earnest heed to this. We got to pay attention to this, right? For if the word that was spoken unto us was the word spoken by angels was steadfast, and every transgression and disobedience received justice, listen, how are we going to escape? How are we going to escape? Yahuwah is going to pay you wages for your unrighteousness. How are you going to escape? Yahuwah is going to pay you wages for your unrighteousness. How are you going to escape? How are you going to get away? How? He said, listen, the word was steadfast, spoken by angels. Yahuwah's word goes out and will not return unto him void. Yahuwah's word goes out and it will not return unto him void. Listen, there is nothing that Yahuwah can't, there's nothing that Yahuwah says that, excuse me. There is nothing that Yahuwah says ever that goes out and does not come back. Yahuwah's word is sure, right? Yahuwah's word, if Yahuwah says, let there be three-headed zebras, then guess what? The word has gone out of his mouth and you're going to see three-headed zebras popping up. Why? Because it's his word and his word has to come to pass. It doesn't matter what you think. Yahuwah's word is sure. His word is sure. His Torah is sure. Listen, his word is his commandment. It's sure. You're going to have to give heed to it. You're going to have to give heed to what you've heard, what you've seen. You got to give heed to what you witnessed in the Ruach HaQodesh. He said, therefore, holy brothers, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider YAHUSHA Mashiach. He is the high priest. He is the high priest of our profession. He is faithful over his renewed covenant, as MOSE was faithful over his house, the original covenant. YAHUSHA was faithful over the original covenant as the priest after the order of Melchizedek. MOSE was faithful over his house, the Levitical priesthood, right? The Levi priesthood, having been given the commandment of the priesthood and given it to Aharon, who was the high priest. He was faithful. He was faithful over what he did. He gave the Besorah, the Torah. He was a teacher of the Torah. YAHUSHA was a teacher of the Torah. YAHUSHA was the Word made flesh. YAHUSHA spent 3 years teaching people Torah, like MOSE spent 40 years with these stiff-necked rebels, teaching them obedience in Torah, showing them what they needed to do, how they needed to obey YAHUSHA's commandments. YAHUSHA did the same thing. He was the Torah made flesh. He was the high priest after the order of Melchizedek. He came and he taught the word. He taught the word. He was the Torah made flesh. He taught the word to his disciples. That's why he said, listen, you're going to receive the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, because the Ruach Ha'Qodesh is going to call to your remembrance everything that I have said unto you. How do you think Peter was able to stand up in the Ruach Ha'Qodesh on the day of Pentecost and preach a message from Joel, a fisherman who had been with YAHUSHA, who had been taught of YAHUSHA, that had spent 3 years educated in YAHUSHA? Right? And during the time of his education, he was carnal. He didn't have YAHUSHA's Ruach. He didn't have YAHUSHA's witness on the inside of him. Yeah, he was baptized, but yeah, he had to receive the blood and the Ruach HaQodesh too. Listen, and when he did, he was able to stand up and declare boldly because he had received the witness. He had received YAHUSHA's witness. In the Ruach HaQodesh, he had now had the ability to call those things to his remembrance that YAHUSHA has said, because the Ruach HaQodesh in him gave him that ability. Listen, you have to consider the high priest YAHUSHA. He was better than Moshe's. His priesthood is better than Moshe's priesthood. Right? Now, this has nothing to do with the Torah. The Torah is intact. The Torah is wonderful. The Torah is everything. Right? We have to keep Yahuwah's commandments. It is something we have to do throughout our generation. Right? But listen, YAHUSHA came with a new order, a new priesthood order. Not a bunch of new commandments, but a new order. A new priesthood order, right? The one commandment that YAHUSHA gave is that, you got to love your brother. Because if you love your brother, that's the greatest commandment. But he knew that in loving his brother, they would do it if they've received the witness of YAHUSHA. They received the witness. If they received the witness in the Ruach HaQodesh, they now had the Father and the Son in them. They now had the capacity to do it. So now they can. But that one commandment was because they received this witness. Because they received the Ruach HaQodesh, because without it, they couldn't do nothing. Because without it, they was arguing and fighting. Who's the greatest? Getting mad at one another. Oh, yeah. Even John, was it John? I think it was John's mother, James and John. Mama said, look, let him sit on my right hand and him on your left. Right? What? How your mama gonna come up and, how's she gonna do that? Right? Right? That's what the disciples like. Well, how's mama go? What's that about? Right? But that wasn't love. That's why YAHUSHA told him, said, listen, you got to love one another. But you're going to understand it once you receive the Ruach HaQodesh. Right? Because that's what's necessary. And that comes only through the Melchizedek priesthood. Because now in the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, right, you can keep the commandments. Under Melchizedek, they couldn't. I mean, excuse me. Under Levi and Aharon and Moshe, they couldn't. Right? They couldn't keep the commandments. They couldn't keep. Listen, they weren't even trying to hear it. The Pharisees and Sadducees said, look, we have Moshe. Moshe. Yahusha could have well said, listen, that order is about to be obsolete. That order is about to be obsolete. Not the Torah. I ain't saying the Torah is obsolete. The Torah is forever. But the Levitical priesthood, that which is established, that was supposed to ensure that the people continued in the Torah and that sacrifices and offerings were made on behalf of the people. That ceased. Moshe, he was faithful. Yahusha was faithul, right? Yahusha was faithful. Right? Right? So now we have been given this promise, right? Through Yahushua HaMashiach, right? The high priest, right? We have a promise of being established in his kingdom again. Right? A promise that has been made to us that we have received from the apostles and the prophets who spoke of this promise, this restored order, right? This kingdom reestablishment, right? We've received from the apostles and the prophets, right? Yahuwah's order to come, his kingdom to come. Those who will make up his kingdom, right? We have understood that in this original covenant, right, spoken by the prophet Ezekiel, that Yahuwah is going to sanctify his great name in us once again, right? His name was sanctified great in Adam and Avah. They were elves in the earth. They were to establish his kingdom, to put the kibosh down, to establish some righteous people, right? But they yielded it, surrendered it, right? And then Yahuwah sent his son Yahusha to establish this kingdom again, to take back dominion from Hasatan, to take away the fear of death, because we now have a promise, right? The promise is here. I will sanctify that great name, which was profaned amongst the heathen. The heathen profaned his name. They took the Masorah and the Torah and they profaned it, right? And which we had profaned in the midst of them. We showed them by our willful disobedience unto Torah that it was okay to profane the name. We by our actions, by our forefathers' actions, right? That's why you ain't gonna make it. You ain't gonna make it, bro. You ain't gonna make it on the testimony of your forefathers. You ain't gonna make it under Moshe and the commandments and the Tanakh and the Torah. You ain't. Listen, the word is life and peace, but it ain't gonna establish you in this renewed covenant. You are established under the Melchizedek priesthood. That's in Yahushua Mashiach. He says, and the heathen shall know that I am Yahuwah. I am Adonai Yahuwah, when I shall be sanctified in you before their eyes. Yahuwah is sanctifying us through Yahushua Mashiach, after the order of Melchizedek, establishing us in his witness, having given us the earnest of his inheritance, the down payment, the seal that seals us in this witness. He sanctified his great name in us. Listen, he sanctified his great name in me. I've received his witness. Right? I've received his witness. He has sanctified his great name in me. Right? Before the heathens. Everybody who knows me. Everyone that I've delivered this Besorah to. Righteous or unrighteous. He has sanctified my name. His name in me. Right? Listen. And he's done it because in obedience, I've received the water that cleansed me. Baptism. Yahusha said, you must be born of the water and of the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. Right? He says, then I will sprinkle clean water upon them, and he shall be cleansed. From all your filthiness and from the idols, I will cleanse you. Yahusha, Yahuwah, has cleansed us in Yahushua HaMashiach in the water and receiving the sacrifice of the blood and the Ruach HaQodesh, because these are the three that testify in the Eretz, right? This is your testimony in the Eretz. You have received the water baptism, you have received the blood of Yahushua's atonement, and you received the Ruach HaQodesh. That's the testimony that you have in the Eretz. Or you should have in the Eretz, because that's the testimony that's going to establish you. Listen, he says, a new heart also will I give you, and a new Ruach HaQodesh will I put within you. I'm going to put the Ruach HaQodesh. Yahushua said it. The Father, I'm going to pray the Father, he's going to send you another comforter. The Ruach HaQodesh of truth. Right? He's going to comfort you. He's going to lead you and guide you. He's going to establish you in the kingdom way of doing things. He's going to show you the way. Right? And a new heart. You're going to be able to love your brother. You're going to be able to love your brother now. You're going to be able to keep his commandment of loving your brother. Right? Because he's going to give you a new heart. And the Ruach HaQodesh will I put within you. And I will take away the old stony heart. Right? Out of your flesh. I'm going to take your old stony dead heart out of you. And I will give you a heart of flesh. Right? Listen. And I will put my Ruach HaQodesh within you. Me and the Father will come and make our abode in you. Right? There are three witnesses in the Shamayim. Abba Father, the Word, and the Ruach HaQodesh. The Word was made flesh. Yahusha is that Word made flesh. That Word is going to come and dwell in us. Yahuwah, he says, I will come. He says, I will put my Ruach HaQodesh and cause you to walk. Because you have received this Ruach HaQodesh, it's going to cause you to walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them. Why? Because Yahuwah and Yahusha is in you. Listen, Hebrew, you got to get this. You got to get this. Listen, this is entering into his rest. Only people that are going to enter into Shiloh are those that are going to be gathered. The only people that are going to be gathered are those that he is sanctifying his great name in amongst the heathen. Only people that are sanctified are those who have received the witness, those who have been born again of the water and the Ruach HaQodesh. Listen. Yeah, he says, listen, you only people. Listen, Hebrews 4 chapter, only people that are going to enter into his rest are those who have received his witness. Listen, you need to get these individual videos and listen to them on Hebrews, because you need to listen to them over and over again. You know, and this is not me tooting my horn. This is the Ruach HaQodesh letting you know what it's going to be, how it's going to look, what it means. Take advantage of it. Listen. He says, listen, for every high priest was taken from among men and ordained of men. Hebrew. Every high priest under Moshe was ordained of Elohiym. They were taken from among men, specifically the tribe of Levi. And they had a bunch of rites. They had a bunch of things that they had to do in order to be of service to Yahuwah. They had the ceremonial wash. They had They had rites that they had to complete in order to be used as a priest in the Levitical priesthood, right? There was no Zebulon in the priesthood. There was no Naphtali in the priesthood. No, there was no Benjamin in the priesthood. No, there was no Benjamin in the priesthood, right? No, right? Benjamin wasn't a part of the priesthood, right? Paul was a Pharisee, a religious leader, but he was Benjamin. How could be? How is that? How was that order so like that? Right? Because it was wrong. They didn't do right by it, right? Who used Paul? Yeah, he used Paul, right? But Paul was of Benjamin. He wasn't even Levitical, right? Listen, the Levites and the priests had infirmities. They just had infirmities. They had sins. That's why they had to offer offerings for themselves first, and then they could offer offerings for the people, right? Yahusha didn't have that issue. He is a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek was a king and a priest of Yahuwah. He was the high priest of Yahuwah. He was Yahusha. Melchizedek. Now, I believe that. You can choose to believe whatever you want, but I believe that Yahusha was Melchizedek. He was the first priest. He was the first priest, right? Melchizedek didn't have a beginning. He didn't have an end, right? So listen. The high priest under Aaron's priesthood, right, offered up sacrifices, right? But they were flawed. Aaron was flawed because of sin. See, listen, that's why Yahuwah's kingdom had to be established in Hamashiach, because Hamashiach was never flawed. The only way that Yahuwah could ever reestablish his kingdom was through Yahushua Hamashiach, and that decision was already made from the foundations of the earth. Listen, Yahuwah did all of this to establish a people who would understand what was necessary in order to be a part of his kingdom. He gave them laws and statutes. He chose them out of Egypt. Kadar, cut it out, I'm going down. He chose them out of the nation. He cut a covenant with Abraham and the 12 tribes. Right. He cut a covenant with Aharon. He met Elohim after the battle of kings and gave him oil and wine and established a covenant with Elohim. And Elohim paid tithes unto him, gave him a tenth. Elohim kept the Torah, right? He was the only one who kept the Torah. He was the only one that died priest. But Yahuwah has established a thing that would continue forever. He had established a thing that would continue forever in Yahushua Mashiach. An order. A priesthood. Aharon's priesthood was flawed. Moshe was faithful in his house. He taught the Torah to the people, but they did not want to obey. He showed Aharon, the high priest, what the order looked like and constructed the tabernacle. Got all of the things that were required that were just shadows of the original. To give man, the tribe, the nation, the order of things in Yahuwah's kingdom to come. Yahushua was the perfect high priest. He was. And you need to understand that you can't let what you know and understand to get away from you. You can't get complacent. You can't cause these things to slip. You can't continue to lay the foundations of repentance from dead works. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. Right? Yahuwah has put in you, if you have received his witness, the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. And you have to cultivate that witness. You got to cultivate it in the word. You got to cultivate it in fasting. You got to cultivate it in praying. Praying in the Ruach and praying with your understanding. Singing in the Ruach. Singing with the understanding. Dancing before Yahuwah. Celebrating Yahuwah and Yahusha's great salvation, Yeshua. Until the manifestation of his kingdom. Listen, that's the return. That's the return. The awakening was necessary for the people because we needed to know that we were Hebrews. We needed to know that we were the people because he's trying to establish his kingdom in his people first. After these 400 years, actually longer than that, we was on the continent. We were in Spain and Portugal. We yielded to the beast system, to Christianity, to Catholicism. We became darkened. We became darkened. Listen, Enoch said it like this. After Enoch's 93 and 10, after that in the 6th week, all of those who are in it shall be darkened. We gonna lose light. The nation left after 70 AD and became darkened. We became darkened. We became darkened. Christianity emerged. The tentacles went into the four corners of the earth. They had taken Hasatan's revelation, Titus Vespasian, who saw the cross and told him to take this emblem and conquer, right? It became darkened. Listen, we were darkened. Christianity gave us the illusion that we had received a Yeshua, a salvation in this Jesus. And all we needed to do was receive Jesus, and the Lord and God would eternally forgive us and give us a home in the heavens, right? We can sin and we know that it's okay because we'll never lose our salvation. Listen, this is not that. This is not that. We can't neglect this. We can't turn our backs on this. We can't turn our backs on it. For it's impossible for those who have tasted. It is impossible for those who have once enlightened. Had Yahuwah and Yahusha come and live in them. Yahusha said he is the light of the world. Yahusha was filled with the glory of Yahuwah. Yahusha was filled with the light of Yahuwah. And we have been enlightened. And having received the witness. And having received the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. We have become enlightened. Right? And have tasted of the heavenly gift. And made partakers in the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. Right? 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 We've tasted it. We have tasted the word, the good word. The word that was made flesh. The word that was recorded by the apostles. The word that was recorded by the prophets. We've received it in Emunah, this good word. This Besorah of truth. Right? Which is the power of the world to come. Hebrews 6 and 5. We can't fall away. It's impossible for this to happen. It's See, and that's how they figure, well, you know, you saved. You once saved, you always saved, because it's impossible. You know, because they always pick scriptures that satisfy their agenda. But they hadn't read the whole text. They haven't read the whole book. Right? It is possible. It is possible. It is possible. It's not possible to renew it again. Because Yahusha is that high priest that went in once and for all. And when he established his house, the Father's house in you, listen, it's a different ball game. You can't come to Jesus. Forgive me, Jesus. Just like, you know, even in the Catholicism, you can go into that little portal or that little closet with the high priest and tell the high priest, you know, look, few days since my confession, few months from my confession, yeah, and I've sinned, you know. Yeah, what have you done, my son? Well, you know, I cheated on my wife 3 times. Okay, my son. He said, what else? Is there anything else? He said, yeah, you know, I killed a man. Oh, okay, my son. Listen, you know, you know that's a sin, and you know that you have to seek forgiveness for it. Yes, Father. That's why I'm here. Yeah. Well, you know, say 20 Hail Marys and something else, and you'll be forgiven, my son. You done bumped. They lost their mind. They done perpetuated this idea that you could get away, but they didn't never receive the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, so they could do whatever they want to in that religion. They could do whatever they want in the Christian religion. But this ain't that. This ain't that. You can't taste of the goodness of Yahuwah. You can't receive the power of the world to come through Ruach Ha'Qodesh. And then turn, man, listen, I'd be crazy. I'd be slap crazy. I'd be slap crazy and lost my mind to turn away from the revelation that I've received and to go into Yah only. Torah and Tanakh only. Without Yahushua Hamash, I'd be stupidity gone to seed. I'd be bump my head. I'd be done bumped my head and lost my mind. I'd be done forgot who I was. Come on, listen, this is not that. Yahuwah gonna repay you. He gonna bless you with his Ruach Ha'Qodesh and cause you to be prosperous and increase. And then all of a sudden you're gonna leave him and go and start producing briars and thorns. Or trying to teach people and sway people to the Tanakh and the Torah. And try to sway people to the new moons away from the Shabbat that they've been honoring. What? Because you got a revelation, but you don't have the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. What? What? Come on, those were shadows. Okay. 6th chapter. 7th chapter. We're talking about the Melchizedek order. Yahusha is that priest after the order of Melchizedek. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, Jerusalem, king of peace, Shalom, right? The king of Shalom, Jerusalem, the priest of the Most High, Elua, who met IVRIYM returning from the slaughters of kings, blessed him. He blessed him. He covenanted with him. He gave him bread and wine. And IVRIYM paid 1/10 to him. He kept the Torah. Of whom also IVRIYM gave 1/10 of all, first being the interpreter, the king of righteousness, because Yahusha is the king of kings and the Lord of lords. He is the king of righteousness. He is king of Adonai. Yahusha, Hamashiach. Right? And the king of Salem, right, Jerusalem, and which is the king of peace, because Yahusha is the prince of peace. Listen, he's the lion of the tribe of Yehuda. Without father or mother descent, neither beginning of days or ends of life, made like unto the son of Elua. made just like the son of Elohiym, is in the same likeness as the son of Elohiym, because he was the son of Elohiym. See, listen, for him, in order for him to be like unto the son of Yahuwah, he'd have to be without sin as the high priest. He had to be the high priest, right? But he had no beginning or no end. But he was the king of Salem. He was the prince of peace. He was the king of Shalom. He was the king of Jerusalem, right? And in order to be that, right, like Yahusha, he would have to be without sin. But sin had passed on everybody. From Adam on, right? He would have had to been without sin. He would have had to been the priest of Shiloh, because he wasn't after the order of Aharon. He was not a priest after the order of Aharon. If he's not a priest after the order of Aharon, guess what? There is only one priest, and that's YAHUSHA HaMashiach, the son of Elohiym, the high priest of Elohiym, and the king of Salem, Jerusalem, Shalom. Hear what the Ruach Ha'Qodesh is saying to the assembly. This YAHUSHA, his priesthood was established upon better promises. See, because the priesthood that was under Aharon was flawed. Melchizedek was not flawed. He was the high priest of Elohiym. He was the first high priest assigned to IVRIYM. And he met IVRIYM and blessed him. And presented bread and wine. And covenanted with him. Right? Right? And IVRIYM blessed him with the 10th. Because he kept Torah. Levi was flawed. Levi's priesthood was replaced. Levi's priesthood, with all his ceremonies and all of his rites, were replaced by the Melchizedek order. Yahuwah testified to this order, swore by it. He told Dawid in a vision or in a prophecy, or however Dawid received it, that YAHUSHA was a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And Aharon paid tithes into Melchizedek. Melchizedek's priesthood has always been superior. Every priesthood after Melchizedek, or came after Melchizedek, was a shadow. It was a shadow. The shadow has been done away with. The tribe is the tribe. Right? But their priestly responsibility, their priesthood, been done away with. Oh, no, actually, I should say it this way. Because that whole done away with idea is kind of like, it's kind of attached to the law being done away with, right? It's been changed under a Melchizedek order, which only requires one priest, which only requires one sacrifice. In order to get into it, you got to get into the Shamayim and enter in at the Most High in the Tabernacle, and to go into the Holiest of Holies. And there's only one priest that could do that. And that's YAHUSHA Mashiach. And see, because he's done that now. Rest of the stuff, right, has been satisfied. And you don't need to do all the ceremonial washing in the sense that as the priest, you had to do these things, right? And YAHUSHA HaMashiach, he establishes us as kings and priests, right? Our manifested positions in the kingdom are going to dictate what and how we are in Yahuwah, by how we're disciplined in the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, our desire to keep his commandments, our desire to reach those with this witness. See, the Melchizedek order is superior to the Levitical order, right? Now, he says this in the 8th chapter, how the ministry is a better ministry, right? He said, now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of Elohiym, the majesty on high. YAHUSHA is already established as the high priest in the heavens on high, right? It's already done. It was actually a done deal in Psalms 110 when David said, Yahuwah said unto YAHUSHA, sit thou on my right hand till I make thy enemies thy footstool. And when he said, Yahuwah have sworn and will not repent, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. YAHUSHA is at the right hand of Yahuwah right now, but it was prophesied before it ever occurred because Yahuwah's word is sure. Words spoken of angels are steadfast. Right? Yahuwah spoke this and swore it unto David himself. He said, you said, I've sworn, and I will not repent. Not only am I telling you that this is the case, I'm swearing to you on top of what I said. Listen, it's a better priesthood, right? It's a better priesthood. It's a renewed covenant. Now, you know, in the Bible, it refers to it as a new covenant. It's not new. It's renewed. There's no way that it's new because it was in the beginning. It was the order of Yahuwah. It is the Melchizedek order, of which only YAHUSHA, the son of Elohiym, was capable of fulfilling. But it is a part of the entire covenant. It is not a new thing in the sense that it's new. It's a renewed covenant that Yahuwah had in the beginning. Right? Yeah, he renewed it. Right? Now, the one that he has established under Moshe, right? Right? That's vanished away. Literally. Literally. Listen. Hebrews 8:13, the last verse. In that he said, a renewed covenant have he made, the first old. Right? Right? And the covenant is not, it's not the entire, the covenant is not the entire Torah. The covenant is not the entire establishment of a people, right? In the sense that he's referring to it here, right? Because covenant is added, right? That word is italicized. Which means that when he says a new covenant, that word was added because that word should not have been covenant. Because Yahuwah didn't create a new covenant. He renewed and established an order. He renewed and established an order, not a covenant in the sense that he's changed the covenant. He's not changed the covenant. He's amended the orders. He made a change to the priesthood because the original priesthood, the original order was flawed, right? So he had to change it. right? And it waxed old. And it's ready to vanish away. See, and Shaul knew it. See, because listen, they knew it was going to become darkened. They knew that when Yahusha said he must work the work while it is day, because when night cometh, no man can work. He knew, Yahusha knew that the world would become darkened. And those that at the time of this dispensation that he was trying to reach, he was trying to establish this in the earth to the point where it could be recorded. So that when we become enlightened after 400 years of being after all of this time, being taken into captivity, and because we were still trying to perform the order. And some of them weren't even doing that right. It had vanished. It literally vanished away. Listen, the awakening is about understanding who you are and what your forefathers did in order not to make the same mistake. The only way to do that is to return, right? Because it's renewal. Return to your covenant in Yahushua HaMashiach, who has become your high priest after the order of Melchizedek, in order to establish Yahuwah's kingdom on the earth, because that's what this is all about. This is all about the establishment of Yahusha. He's getting his people right if you receive his witness as the high priest after the order of Melchizedek, and he's going to come and establish his kingdom, because the scepter shall not depart from Yehuda, or a lawgiver a Melchizedek priesthood from between his feet unto Shiloh, till rest, peace, tranquility comes, and unto him will the gathering of the people be. We gonna be gathered unto him, but people gonna be gathered unto Yahushua Mashiach even after he establishes his kingdom. They gonna come to themselves and recognize that their fathers have lied to them. Can we be named by your name? Can we take your name? Can we take your identity? Man, listen. It's vanished away. The Levitical order has vanished. There's nobody that can perform in this Levitical priesthood, because Yahusha has established a new Levitical order. There is no more holies of holies. Not on the earth. There is no more sacrifices. Because you can't sacrifice without taking the blood and sprinkling it upon the altar. Hebrew, how you gonna escape, Hebrew? How you gonna do it? Okay. Hebrews the 9th chapter. We going in. Excuse me. Okay. He said, then verily the first, again, they have covenant here, italicized, which means that it was added at the writer's discretion, because he had to bring understanding from his own intellect, right? When the first covenant, or the first, and he's talking about priesthood. He's not talking about the Torah. He's not talking about the law. He's talking about the priesthood. He's talking about everything that represented the priesthood. He's talking about the priest. He's talking about the washing, the order, the tabernacle, the holies, the most holies, the holies of holies, what they went in to do, what they were allowed to do. This is what he's talking about. He's not talking about the Torah being changed. He's not talking about the Torah being done away with. He's not talking about none of that. He says, okay, so verily the first, right, had also ordinances and divine services and a worldly sanctuary. The first Levitical order, not covenant. The first Levitical order. And it's not the first in the sense that it was the original, because the original is the order of Melchizedek. But this was the first that was established from amongst men, right? Okay. Out of the loins of IVRIYM, right? In Levi, right? Moshe the lawgiver, Aaron the high priest. This first, right, had ordinances, divine services, and worldly sanctuaries. It had a worldly sanctuary. It had synagogues, which were worldly sanctuaries throughout cities. It had a tent. It had, within that tent, it had a most holy and the holies of holies, right? These were made by men. Therefore, man was carnal. What he constructed was carnal, right? So when they constructed all the instrumentations, when they put the tabernacle together, they laid it with gold. They did all of the things, the Ark of the Covenant, you know, these were just types. Mose had received instructions from YAHUSHA HaMashiach, who was the priest after the order, who was the Melchizedek priesthood, who existed even until this day that was before. He had received instructions on how this should be carried out. Mose went up and recorded it. And once he recorded it, he gave it to the people, and they needed to record it in the manner in which he had taken it down. But it was going to always be carnal. It was going to always be the shadow because it's not the original. The light shined on the original and it produced the shadow. The shadow is like the image or the original, but it is what it is. It's a shadow. It can be taken away, right? So here we have this order of things that incorporated worldly sanctuaries, divine services, right? Ordinances of divine services. Now, listen. The ordinances are those that are directly associated with the service of the priesthood. That's the only change. Because YAHUSHA is that high priest at the order of Melchizedek. He fulfilled what was necessary in the offering of sacrifice. Listen, everything was ordinances. The services were divine, right? They were divine services, right? The sanctuary was worldly. You got synagogues. Paul went into the synagogues, but they were worldly. The tabernacle that they made, that they pitched, was worldly. Yahuwah visited it, but he didn't remain there because it was worldly. He has a place in the Shamaim. That's the original. It's like buying a Harley Davidson, right? Harley Davidson Ultra Classic 2022, right? Right, that's the heavenly, right? But the earthly, right, is a knockoff, or not a knockoff. I shouldn't say a knockoff. Is a copy. Someone who has taken this and built one just like it. It ain't the original, because the original was constructed a certain way. And there's certain elements to the original that are far superior than the copy, right? Right? You could tell a copy because a copy has flaws. You know, it's like a Gucci bag. You go to a Gucci store and buy a Gucci bag. Wow, you know it's a Gucci bag. You go to the flea market and find a bunch of Gucci bags. You could get that Gucci bag, right? But that Gucci bag is a copy. It's not the original. Right? Right? It's not the original. So, for there was a tabernacle made in the first, wherein the candlesticks, the table, and the showbread, which is called the sanctuary. So there was a sanctuary, right? Right? They had them, right? And after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, right? Where the Ark of the Covenant was, right? Right? Which had a golden censer and an ark and the covenant overlaid round about with pure gold, wherein was gold pot and the manna and Aaron's rod budded and all of these things, and the table of the covenant. Right now, the table of the covenant of the Torah, the tablets of the covenant, the Torah, they were in the ark. Right? They were in the ark. Right? Right? They were the commandments. Right? And all these things that were made were copies. Right? They were to reflect what it is in the Shamayim, but it was not the Shamayim. Right? Because this was carnal. Because it was made by man's hands. It was carnal. Now, Yahuwah sanctified it, right? With blood. He purged, he cleansed, he set it apart, right? Because they had to set these vessels apart. Yahuwah had to set his approval on these vessels, right? That's why you could not just go into the presence of Yahuwah, holies of holies, having not been set apart, having not been sanctified. That's why they put bells on the bottom of their robes. And they tied strings to their feet. Because, you know, if they didn't hear the bells any longer, they assumed that, you know, the priest had, and they drug him out from out of the holies of holies. Right? Because everything in there was set apart. Right? But if the priest was flawed, guess what? He wasn't going to make it. But he had flaws. Yahusha didn't, right? So we have this order, right? This Levitical priesthood order that was to mirror, right, what it looked like in the Shamayim. And Yahuwah, or Adonai Yahusha, gave Moshe the instructions on how it was to be made. He says, listen, for there was a tabernacle made first, wherewith was candlesticks and the table and the showbread, which is called the sanctuary. And after the second veil, which is the holies of holies, these things were in, right? Down to Aaron's rod that budded in the table and the covenants, right? The tablets and the covenant. He said, Tables, tables. It would be tablets. Tablets of stone. Right? And then it says, and over it a cherubim, the glory, shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. So, you know, there's some things that Paul recognized that were a part of this mercy seat, that the cherubims of glory and all of this, that he couldn't voluntarily declare right now. Right? Right? For whatever reason, the Ruach Ha'Qodesh said, no. But it was a shadow of the cherubims that are there in the Shamayim, right? Right? The glory and the mercy seat, all of this, right, were just shadows. They were a reflection of what it was in the Shamayim, right? He says, listen, now, when these things were thus ordained, right, because Yahuwah set these things apart, he has sanctified these things with blood, He purified, because ain't nothing cleansed or sanctified. There's the washing, but you know, it's the blood that sanctifies, right? So he says, when these things were thus ordained or set apart, the priest went in always into the first tabernacle, right, to do the service of Yahuwah, right, because they had the Levitical right to enter into this area, right, to accomplish the service, right, of Yahuwah, because there were things that they needed to do daily, right, in the service of Yahuwah, and within that first veil that they had to accomplish, right? And now this had to be done all the time. This had to be done daily. They could not take a break. That's why Yahuwah had established them as the priestly tribe that did not have inheritance, because they had to do this all the time. They couldn't have land. They couldn't work fields. They couldn't keep sheep. They couldn't do none of that. Their business was to offer up sacrifices on your behalf every day. They had things that they had to do, right? Rights, right? Yahusha didn't have to do that, because they were carnal. And what they were was a shadow. They were what the Hebrew nation needed to see and understand in order for them to come to a place where, when the time of Melchizedek order of priesthood would be established, they would turn, right, from their ways, right, and they would receive the witness of Yahushua HaMashiach. And in receiving that witness of Yahushua HaMashiach, they would now become established in this order, right? And they could be, in the power of the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, become kings and priests, serving the kingdom of Yahuwah Nalua. Some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, some teachers, for the edifying of the kingdom, the body that those would represent and make up the kingdom. Yahushua HaMashiach's kingdom. Yahushua HaMashiach's body. Listen. He said, listen. He said, now when these things were thus ordained, the priests went always into the first tabernacle, accomplishing the service, right? But into the second, the high priest alone, once a year, not without blood, right, which he offered for himself and the errors, the sins of the people. Yahushua Mashiach's order was once and for all. The high priest went into the holies of holies, into the presence of Yahuwah, every year. Every year. Every year. Until Yahuwah caused them to cease. Yahuwah caused the sacrifices to cease. Yahuwah caused the feast days to cease. Yahuwah caused the Shabbats to cease. And that doesn't mean that the Shabbat changed its day. That means that they no longer kept the Shabbat. And Yahuwah didn't even honor them, because they didn't receive the witness of Yahushua Mashiach. They didn't receive the witness. So if you ever receive the witness of Yahushua Mashiach, in his eyes, it don't matter how many Shabbats you go to, it's ceased. Listen, man of Yah, woman of Yahuwah, if you have not received the witness of YAHUSHA HaMashiach, it doesn't matter how many feast day celebrations you have. It doesn't matter how many Shabbats you attend. It doesn't matter how many new moons you recognize. If you haven't received the witness of YAHUSHA HaMashiach after the order of Melchizedek priesthood, listen, it has ceased for you from Yahuwah. He said, listen, the high priest went in once and for all. I mean, YAHUSHA HaMashiach, after the order of Melchizedek, went into the Holies of Holies once and for all. Because he had to go into the Holies of Holies, because that's where Yahuwah has established his tabernacle. That's where Yahuwah visited. Right? He visited. Right? He visited the temple, the tabernacle, the dwelling place within the second curtain, the Holies of Holies. I'm getting somewhere. The actual Ruach Ha'Qodesh is getting somewhere. Right? He says, but the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, this signifying, the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, that the way into the holies of all was not yet manifested, while as the first tabernacle was yet standing. So listen, right? So the tabernacle that was still standing, right? Well, YAHUSHA said that there will not be one stone left unturned, right? This temple will be destroyed. He was speaking of his body, but he was also speaking of the cessation, I think it is, the ceasing of the sacrifices. The Levitical priesthood would cease to represent him, because you have to come through him and his Melchizedek priesthood, right? Because apart from the Melchizedek priesthood, there is no priesthood. Woo! Okay, whether you want to hear it or not, it's the truth. There is no priesthood apart from the Melchizedek order priesthood that was established in YAHUSHA HaMashiach as spoken by Dawid, who had received witness of it in the 110th division of Psalms, of which IVRIYM was met by YAHUSHA, who presented bread and wine and the establishment of a covenant, an eternal covenant, who did not have a beginning or an end, who did not have any descendants, just Melchizedek, because he was the high priest of Yahuwah. He was Yahuwah. The Ruach Ha'Qodesh, which came as a result of the witness of YAHUSHA HaMashiach, which establishes the kingdom of Yahuwah, right? Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Listen. Right? Right? Which a figure for the time when present. See, the sanctuary, right? The sanctuary, right? That was the tabernacle, right? Was carnal. It was temporary. It was a way of YAHUSHA establishing a relationship with the people that would get them to the ultimate establishment of the kingdom under the Melchizedek order in YAHUSHA HaMashiach. See, because after YAHUSHA HaMashiach, it faded away. After YAHUSHA HaMashiach, it had faded away. Now, they were offering up sacrifices before and during the time of YAHUSHA Mashiach, right? And the priests that were offering them up, most of them was wicked anyway, right? But here what we have is we have YAHUSHA Mashiach's order because it was time. And YAHUSHA was manifested in the time that he was manifested in because it was time, right? It was time for this order of the priesthood to cease. And because this order has ceased, and YAHUSHA, who's after the order of Melchizedek, has arrived and has come because he's become king and priest. Yes, he has dominion in the Eretz and in the Shamayim. He has dominion. YAHUSHA took it from Hasatan. He took it back. When he went into the Shamayim, he went into Shamayim as the Lamb of Yahuwah with the sacrifice of his blood, and as the high priest after the order of Melchizedek, who could go into the holies of holies in the Shamayim, the real holies of holies, not the image, not the image, but the real holies of holies, right? Because this holies of holies wasn't taken serious because the people were flawed. Listen, it wasn't taken serious. You know, I mean, you had Hebrews that were serious about it, you know, and fought for it. You know, Judas Maccabees fought for it, right, to establish this priestly order with the Levites. And you know, it should have been established under him because it was still yet in play, right? But they could never get it right because the right needed to be in them, right? Because they were carnal. They were flawed, right? They didn't offer up sacrifices for themselves and for the people. They were flawed. They were manipulated. They were manipulators. Hear the word of Yahuwah. Listen. The Ruach Ha'Qodesh has changed it all for us. Understand this, right? Ask yourself, the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, right, has taken us from death to life. Paul said it in Ephesians, you have thee quickened, right? Let's go to Ephesians 2. He said Ephesians 2 and 1. You who were dead in your trespasses and sins. Now, the word haven't he quickened was added to at the writer's discretion, right? The idea is being taken from death to life. And death is trespasses and sins, right? For in times past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, who had dominion, right? The Ruach that now worketh in the children of disobedience. This Ruach, right? Among whom also we had our conversations in time past in the lust of our flesh, right? That's why if you still lusting in your flesh and saying you got the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, you do lie and tell not the truth, right? He said, because you can't be sitting up and masturbating and playing with yourself and saying that you have the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, you lie, right? For a time past, the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath. We were by nature the children of wrath. But Elohiym, who was rich in mercy, wherewith his great love, wherewith he loved us, even we were dead in our sins, hath quickened us together with Mashiach. So he gave us life, right? In Mashiach, right? Now this life that he's given us is the life that he refers to in the first chapter, in the 13th verse, when he says, and whom also, after that ye heard the word of the Torah, right? The Basora of your Yeshua, right? Your Yeshua, right? and whom also after that you received the witness, believing, having received the witness, the water, the blood, and the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, believed, you were sealed. You have a seal, right? Right? Which is the Ruach HaQodesh of promise. So the Ruach HaQodesh is the seal, but it is also the promise, right? Right? That's why Paul referred to in Hebrew. He says, listen, don't do this, because you don't want to risk having not received the promise of rest, right? So we understand that the Ruach HaQodesh is the promise, right? Which is the earnest of our inheritance unto the redemption of the purchased possession of the time that he gathers us up and to the praise of his glory, right? Right? Wherefore also after that we heard of your emunah in YAHUSHA Mashiach, right? Have and love for all the saints. Cease not to give thanks for you, making mention of you in prayer, that Adonai, cut it out. Cease not to give thanks for you, making mention of you in your prayer. Excuse me, I'm sorry for that. That the Adonai of our, that Eluah of our Adonai YAHUSHA Mashiach, the Father of glory, may give unto you the Ruach HaQodesh of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of him, right? The eyes of your understanding be enlightened, that you may know what is the hope of his calling, what the riches of glory of inheritance are. Listen, this is what you're receiving. This is what you're receiving. This is what you're receiving. This is the riches of his glory, the inheritance of his saints. The saints, the Kodeshim, those who have his Ruach HaQodesh in them, which sets you apart, which gives you life, which quickens you, which is your seal. Listen, Shaul is saying here, listen. The Ruach HaQodesh, signifying that the way into the holies of all was not yet manifested, right? While the first tabernacle, the way, who is the way? YAHUSHA is the way. Listen, he says that the way, who goes into the holiest of all, was not yet manifested. It wasn't. Because YAHUSHA, which is the way, right, and the way is obedience unto Torah. YAHUSHA is the way, the truth, and the life. So the way, which is into the holies of all, was not manifested yet. YAHUSHA had not manifested in the holies of holies, having conquered death, taken dominion back from Hasatan, going into the Shamayim, into the holies of holies, offering up his blood as the high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. It had not happened, right? Right? Which a figure for the time then present. There had to be sacrifices for sin. And he had a temporary way of doing it through Levi. But Levi was flawed. But that way continued until the order of Melchizedek was revealed. Right? So, he says, which a figure for the time present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices, could not make him that did the service perfect. Listen, those who performed it, the Levitical priesthood, the high priests, weren't perfect. And it could not perfect them. They could not be the kind of high priest that could represent the sacrifice because they were flawed. They had flaws. And these services didn't make them perfect. It covered them. That's why they had to do it all the time. had to offer sacrifices all the time. Continually going into the holies, the most holies, and then going into the holies of holies. They had to constantly, because it could never be made perfect. Their priesthood was flawed. Because if it wasn't flawed, it would have continued. But Yahuwah says, no, I have a priesthood that'll be established forever. That priesthood is the order of Melchizedek. See, the priesthood, right, faded away, literally. It faded away. After the temple was torn down and destroyed, it faded away. But YAHUSHA Mashiach became that perpetual Yeshua for those who would receive the witness. Right? So, on the continent, wherever we went, we tried to continue to do things, but we were flawed. And then we maintain oral traditions, right, which help bring us to a knowledge of who we are and where we went. But listen, we were flawed. We became darkened. These things were, he says, they were perfect services. He says, which was a figure for the time when present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices that could not make him that did the service perfect, as pertaining to the consciousness, right? Because they always had a consciousness of sin. YAHUSHA didn't have a consciousness of sin. They were born in sin and shaped in iniquity. YAHUSHA was not. He was the seed and the egg of YAHUSHA put into the womb of a virgin who had not had her womb violated or tainted. And she brought forth YAHUSHA. He says now, which, that's italicized, stood, right? Those were italicized words, right? So the conscience, only in meat and in drink, and divers washings and carnal ordinance imposed until the time of reformation. So in essence, these sacrifices and these washings and these services were good enough to take care of their flesh from the outside, to cleanse, to wash. Your flesh washed, cleansing washed, the sacrifice, the blood of goats only worked on the outside. It didn't take the consciousness of sin away. See, I don't consciously want to sin. I've received the Ruach Ha'Qodesh and the witness of YAHUSHA Mashiach. There's nothing in me that consciously wants to sin. I consciously want to do what is right before Yahuwah. I don't want to do anything that's wrong. Right? Because I've received the witness. The Ruach Ha'Qodesh is in me. I don't consciously sin. Have no desire to consciously sin. But that's because his Ruach is in me. See, listen. I'm going to give you a little of this, but I'm not going to give you all of it right now because we got to get through this. Listen. Because we've received the witness, we've been washed, right? We have the blood of YAHUSHA of an eternal covenant. He is taken into the most holies as the priest who could do it because he has no consciousness of sin, right? But he can go into the heavens, into the holies of holies, and offer sin for us righteously. And because YAHUSHA will receive it, YAHUSHA say, listen, we're going to do away with these tabernacles, these outward things. We're going to tabernacle in them. That's why you got to have the Ruach HaQodesh. Because see, this old service and way of doing things is done. These services, these tabernacles, right? These washings, these sacrifices, done. Because Yahuwah said, listen, I'm going to live in you. I ain't never wanted to live in stones and tablets of stones. That was never my original order of the kingdom. See, because my original order of the kingdom was what I established in Adam and Havah when I put my Ruach Ha'Qodesh in them. And it's only because they violated this Torah that I gave them, and thereby yielding, surrendering the dominion from them to Hasatan, because I took my Ruach and I put them out the garden. I put them out the kingdom. The only way I've always wanted to tabernacle in them. I've always wanted to maintain my residency in them. And then I would come down in the cool of the day and visit them. I would manifest my presence in them with them. But I was always there with them. And when they violated my Torah, I knew it. Because they had violated my Torah. My Ruach HaQodesh witnessed it. Bore witness to it. Listen. Yahuwah never intended to be housed in temples made of stone. Right? Now, when his kingdom comes, when Yahusha, the kingdom comes, when Yahusha and the kingdom comes, right? When Yahusha and the kingdom comes, when Yahusha and the kingdom comes, he's coming with the tabernacle, the sanctuary. It's all coming from the heavens down to the Shamayim to be established in the Eretz like he had always intended. You know, Black Panther was symbolic, right? Kind of Hollywood shadow of what they perceived that it would look like, right? Right. Now, in the kingdom of Yahuwah and Eluah, right, there's a righteousness, right? And can't anybody get in. You know, just like on Black Panther, there was this dome. You just wasn't walking up into that kingdom, right? He had the rhino, right? The animals weren't hostile toward them in that kingdom. Hollywood wanted to give you a glimpse of what your kingdom was in Africa, right? Your kingdom in Africa had vibranium, which was a source of power, super power, nuclear power that fed the whole Wakanda area. It had technology. Yahuwah's kingdom. I'm telling you. Yahuwah's kingdom. The only people getting in is those who have received his witness. Those who have accepted Yahushua HaMashiach. And the king, that is the Black Panther, Yahushua HaMashiach, he will sit on the throne. And only those who have received his witness are going to be allowed to enter into the kingdom. Yeah. Okay. So, he said, which only in meat and drink and diverse washings and carnal ordinances opposed until the Reformation. The Reformation is Yahushua HaMashiach, the high priest after the order of Melchizedek, comes on the scene, And he is on the scene. Yeah. Yeah. The Levitical priesthood is a wrap. That order has faded away. And you ain't going to establish it. You Tanakh and Torah only, y'all people. You ain't going to establish it. You don't have the capability. You can't do it. You can't return unless you return in Hamashiach. Listen. Let's go on. How many more verses we got? Yeah, we got quite a bit. So I'm going to hit one more verse and then we're going to bring it to a close. He says, what is that? Right. Reformation. But Hamashiach becoming a high priest, Hamashiach being the high priest after the order of Melchizedek of good things to come, because Yahusha not only was the perfect high priest, but with him came Yeshua. Right? Because the high priest under the order of Aharon, they didn't bring Yeshua. They had sheep and offering. They offered up sacrifices, but Yahusha was the lamb that took away the sins of the world. Yahusha established the kingdom of Yahuwah in the earth again. He put his Ruach Ha'Qodesh back in men who would receive the witness to establish them in his kingdom in the earth. That's good things. That's the promise. See, that's what IVRIYM saw. That's what IVRIYM knew and looked into. He said, but Hamashiach being after the order, high priest after the order of Melchizedek, of good things to come, by greater and more perfect tabernacle in the Shamayim, right? Not made with hands, carnal, right? That is to say, not of this building, not of the construction that you have witnessed in your synagogues, that your ancestors have witnessed in the tabernacles. It's far greater than that. He says, listen, that is to say, not of this building. He says, and neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered into the holies of holies and obtained eternal redemption. I'm stopping there. I'm going to stop there. Man of Yah, woman of Yah, listen. You have to understand that Yahushua HaMashiach is the only way. You must be born again. You have to receive the witness of the Ruach HaQodesh. You must be established in this witness. Yahuwah has appointed me to tell you, Kadar, shut up! He's appointed me to tell you that you must receive the Ruach HaQodesh, the witness. You must continue, remain, and dwell in this witness in order to make it into his kingdom. The kingdom is a wonderful thing. It's a rest. It's a promise to those who receive the witness. And because you Hebrew ain't going to gain you entrance. You Hebrew, and if you turn to Yahushua Mashiach and receive him as the high priest after the order of Melchizedek and be baptized in water, you receive his blood that he offered up on the altar as an eternal sacrifice, right? And you receive the Ruach Ha'Qodesh, which is going to keep you. It's Yahuwah and Yahusha in you. It's their tabernacle now, until the tabernacle of Yahuwah is manifested in the earth. From the Shamayim. Yahuwah, I pray right now that the words that you have given me to give to them, that they would receive and emunah and keep. I take authority over everything that would attack their minds and their thoughts, that would try to sway them from the Ruach Ha'Qodesh speaking to them. And that you would subdue everything that's not like you. That you would take it and bind it. That you would take authority over it. That you would loose them in the name of YAHUSHA Mashiach, that they would receive this witness. Yahuwah, I thank you for counting me faithful to be able to declare your Basor and your Torah of truth. Yahuwah, allow your word to manifest in the name of YAHUSHA Mashiach in the lives of those that you have chosen. I pray for my Gentile brothers in these countries that are receiving the witness of YAHUSHA Mashiach and emunah and have received the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. I pray that you would cause them to continue to stand firm and strong in what they have received. Yahuwah, I pray in the name of YAHUSHA Mashiach. I thank you for the Shabbat that is coming upon us. I just praise you for the Shabbat. And Yahuwah, I worship you and I magnify you and I glorify you and I rest on your Shabbat. And I don't get caught up, Yahuwah, in these days and Shabbats, and I don't, Yahuwah. I just move in your Ruach, and I accept what is before me in the name of YAHUSHA Mashiach. And Yahuwah, I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Yahuwah, you are my strength and my Redeemer. Man of Yah, woman of Yah, that's all we have. Listen, this is the word. This is the word. Hear the word. Hear the word. Listen, listen, listen. I encourage you to listen and listen to it again and again. Let it become alive in you, because Yahuwah is speaking. He is speaking. He is speaking. And it's a Melchizedek priesthood that he has established in a Mashiach. And we who have received his witness and remain, continue, and dwell in him, we going to enter into Shiloh. Tranquility, rest, peace, prosperity, because we have a scepter that has not departed from Jerusalem, Yehuda, or a lawgiver from between his feet. Yes, we do. So, man of Yah, woman of Yah, called the greatness, woman of Yahuwah, beautifully wonderfully made today. Yahuwah's favorite you. Go forth in this Shabbat approaching, and I say Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Listen, be blessed and walk in this witness, being led by the Ruach Ha'Qodesh. Shalom. Torah Guardian, speaking the absolute truth. Torah.